Welcome to Talking with Tatchell. 60 years ago, the people of Baluchistan briefly won their independence. They won it in 1947. The following year, in 1948, they were occupied by Pakistan and have remained occupied and oppressed ever since. But defiant and determined, they are still struggling for their freedom. We are witnessing an increasing movement within Baluchistan to secure their right to self-determination, and in response, increasing repression by the Pakistani authorities. With me to discuss this ongoing battle to secure a free and independent Baluchistan is Mehran Baluch, the representative of Baluchistan at the United Nations Human Rights Council. Welcome, Mehran.
Thank you.
I'd like to start by asking you, where is Baluchistan, for those who don't know?
Baluchistan is the southwest of Pakistan. It's got 1,400 kilometers of coastline to the Arabian Sea. It's 48% of the landmass of Pakistan, to the southwest of it. And it is a part of Afghanistan and Iran as well. So it's one big chunk towards the Arabian Sea, is Baluchistan as a whole.
And how many people live in the total territory of Baluchistan?
The entire territory of what we call the Greater Baluchistan is probably about 15 million. There are no exact figures, but the Pakistan part of Baluchistan is about 10 to 11 million.
So the vast majority of Baluch people live in what is now Pakistan.
Pakistan-occupied Baluchistan, yeah.
And can you tell us a little bit about the situation there right now in terms of the increasing repression by the Pakistani state?
Yeah, I'll just go a bit in the background. In 1948, when we were forcibly annexed and occupied by the Pakistani military, since then we have suffered 5 military operations by Pakistan Army, and the latest one is started in year 2000, and it has been an ongoing military operation denied by the Pakistani government internationally. It has taken thousands of lives, and hundreds of people have disappeared since. And I have presented the case of those people in the United Nations Human Rights Commission, or presently Human Rights Council. But on the whole, the situation is very grim. The total casualties since occupation would amount to about over 20,000.
And do the Baluch people regard themselves as a nation?
Yes, Baluch people regard themselves as a nation, and Baluchistan is a nation. It has no common factor with Pakistan. But when we talk about Pakistan, we have to be very careful how we present or how we look at Pakistan. Pakistan altogether is an amalgamation of 4 different nations: Punjab, Sindh, Frontier, and Baluchistan. But at present, the nation which is ruling and suppressing the other nations is the Punjabi nation. So Punjab is actually camouflaging itself under this false figure of Pakistan. They are the majority in Pakistan. Their rule, the army is predominantly Punjabi. The federal government is predominantly controlled by the Punjabis. The 3 other nations, in particular Sindh and Baluchistan, are being looted and plundered by the Punjabi nation for the benefit of the Punjabi nation. So we have to be very careful when we say Pakistan. It's 4 different nations artificially put together on the name of religion, or under the name of religion. And it's basically surviving on the survival of the country depends on fundamentalism, and how much they can scare the West.
So in many ways, the problems faced by the Baluch people in securing their sort of independence, it all revolves or boils down to the colonial era and the way the colonial authorities drew the maps and created these entities.
Yes, and now because of the neo-colonial rule of the Punjabi in the region, that is our present problem.
I mean, are the Baluch people calling for self-government or independence, or what precisely is their prime objective?
The prime objective, there are diverse opinions in Baluchistan, but the prime objective of every Baluch, I would believe, is to live as equal citizens in dignity and with pride, in a Baluchistan or in a Pakistan. but to have equal rights and to live as a dignified citizen. That is the prime objective. But there are organizations, there are groups, there are nationalists who believe that it is our natural right to have independence because we were occupied. If something is done wrong, if an occupation goes a certain length of time, it does not justify that occupation. One should reinstate or one should aspire for the legal status of a sovereign independent nation of Baluchistan.
Which it was briefly in 1947-48.
Yes, for 9 months we were an independent nation until we were forcibly annexed by the Punjabi army.
Yeah. And in terms of the struggle for independence, or even just the basic principle of self-determination, the right for there to be a proper plebiscite so that the people of Baluchistan can make their own choices. What is the sort of main priority in your point of view? Is it, are these groups wanting autonomy, self-government, independence? What's their main motivation? If
taking the median or the average of all the wants of the people or different groups, it would boil down to right to self-determination. But they are from independence to equal rights. So if you took the mean, it will be the right to self-determination.
And this is not something that is broadly supported or endorsed by the international community?
International community, unfortunately, is either unaware of it or absolutely not interested in it. Aware and not interested. My aim as the representative in the Human Rights Commission and Council is to highlight the issues of suppression, subjugation, and human rights violations by the Pakistani government, plus to address the question of our legal status. We are an occupied nation. At present, yes, our present concerns are human rights and X, Y, and Z, which are present concerns, but we must also address the greater problem, the root cause of the problem, which is illegal occupation by Pakistan.
Yeah. Under the Pakistani occupation, do the Baluch people have any measure of self-government or autonomy?
Absolutely not. They have puppet governments set up from time to time. By 1973 was the first time that a fairly genuine Baluch nationalist government was formed. But after 8 months, which was headed by Sardar Ataullah Mengal, our nationalist leader, and after 8 months of that government's formation, the federal government dissolved it because it was talking for the rights of the Baluch people, for development in Baluchistan, and for a just and equal share of everything for Baluchistan, which is unacceptable to the Pakistani majority, the Punjabis, because they live upon our means and resources. And if we are going to have a share of that, they will have less of it.
Yeah, I understand that the Baluchistan region produces about 30% or more of Pakistan's natural gas.
Yes, it comes from the Sui gas fields, which has been very controversial because until I think the last decade, Baluchistan was not given any gas, and all the gas was pumped straight to Punjab province, where millions of people enjoyed the gas produced by Baluchistan. And Baluchistan was not only not given the gas, but not even given the revenues accumulated by the sale of that gas in other provinces.
My understanding also that Baluchistan is one of the most impoverished regions of Pakistan, despite having this huge natural resource wealth.
It is the most impoverished region, where most average person is below the poverty line. And there is a greater design and an aim of the Pakistani majority, the Punjabi ruling elite. They want Baluchistan and the Baluch people to be kept, as second-class or third-class citizens. They do not promote education. They do not build hospitals. When they talk about developments, they talk about developments of army cantonments. At present, we have 69 paramilitary cantonments. We have 3 military cantonments.
What is cantonment?
Garrisons.
Garrison,
Actually, garrison is the correct word.
Yeah.
They call it cantonment, which dilutes the real image of the thing. They're garrisons. And there are 3 naval bases in Baluchistan, and 2 nuclear and biological testing sites. The Pakistan government tested their nuclear bomb in 1998 in Baluchistan, 100 kilometers from our national capital, Quetta. And the repercussions of that nuclear test are still coming to surface, and it's something to think about.
So they wouldn't do it in Punjab?
Oh, not at all.
They did it in Baluchistan?
In Baluchistan, yes.
And what have been the consequences in terms of people's health and contamination?
Contamination of water, radioactivity. There has been absolutely no international authority or nobody from the International Atomic Authority doing any kind of research or any kind of gauging of how much disaster has taken place over there since. The malformations of animals, malformations of children, disabilities in children. It's absolutely very sad. But this has to be highlighted, that this was not coincidence. As it is not coincidence today that we have been subject of a cyclone this week. Over 1.5 million people have been made homeless. And the Pakistani authorities have done absolutely nothing. And it's been, today is the 15th day since we were hit by the floods and the cyclone. And I think just today on the news, Pakistani authorities said, yes, this is roughly along the scales of the earthquake, whereas this is more, it has caused more devastation than the earthquake had. But earthquake was their own people. Over here is the Baluch people. That is the distinction.
In terms of how Baluchistan is now run, is it all run by the central government in Pakistan, or is there some form of local government in the region as well?
There is provincial government, but who are pure puppets of Musharraf. They're Musharraf's rubber stamps who endorse everything Musharraf says is done, from the chief minister to the home minister to every ministry in Baluchistan. They are all not elected members, they're selected members by Musharraf through his false elections. And they serve the purpose of Musharraf. They are not the representative of Baluch people.
And so I suppose that explains part of the reason why some groups have taken up armed resistance against the Pakistani occupation. Obviously, the opportunities for peaceful democratic change seem non-existent.
Yes, there are a number of reasons why numerous armed groups, I would not call them armed groups, Baloch patriots, have taken the course of action of armed struggle, because they feel very they're not helpless, but they feel that any other form of struggle has yielded no results thus far.
60 years of
60 years
patience,
lobbying and hoping, because Pakistan has promised this great Islamic heaven would produce happiness for everyone, which is not the case. They have started armed struggle, which they had started from the day of occupation. This is not the first time the Baluch groups, they're being highlighted more because of international media, because of people like yourself who have taken interest in the deprivation, in the suppression of the Baluch people. Therefore it's getting highlighted. But the armed struggle has been continuously there.
And which groups are leading that battle?
There are a number of groups by a number of names. Who knows who these people are? Nobody has. They're underground groups who fight the army occupation. They are sometimes defamed by saying, oh, they kill civilians, whatever. I would not like to pass any judgment on their doings, whether it's right or wrong. But their main aim is, as they have clarified in the press all the time, is to target the army, the occupiers, who are coming over there to actually harm the local population. And technically we are undergoing social genocide, economic genocide, cultural genocide, which I think comes under the category of crimes against humanity. And this has been carried out by a general supported by the West on the basis that he is a partner in the war against terror, whereas he is the creator of terror himself. So it's a very complex question and a complex state of affairs, but yet very simple if one wants to simplify it and look at the situation.
And my understanding is that the Baluchistan Liberation Army, the BLA, has actually been prescribed by the United Kingdom government as a terrorist organisation. Can you tell us a little bit about that and why you think this has been done?
I think the main reason for this was that British, without any investigation, without any thought behind prescription of an organization which I believe they know very little about, other than what has been told by Musharraf's regime to them, was probably to please the Pakistan government. Other than that, I don't see any realistic, credible reason why they would ban an organization which maybe they have done some hidden research that they have done no research or know nothing about.
Yeah, I'm not asking you to give any endorsement, but I hear from a lot of Baluch people that they regard the Baluchistan Liberation Army and other similar groups as, you know, waging a national liberation war like the African National Congress in South Africa.
The Baluchistan Liberation Army has brought hope to many Baluch people who thought that this was the end. It has brought hope to people who thought that we will be under the hegemony of the Punjabis forever. They are a glimmer of light for many people. One important thing to note would be our great national patriot, Nawab Akbar Khan Bukti, was murdered by Musharraf and his group of thugs last year. And he was a national leader. He was so called that he was Baluchistan Liberation Army. He's the same person who consented with the concept of Pakistan, to a degree, sold, not sold would be the wrong word, to allowed the Pakistanis to use his gas from his territory, Sui gas, to supply Pakistan, hoping that maybe this would create some kind of bridges between the two nations, that we help each other out, as neighboring nations should. But they took it for granted. They used the gas. They never provided any revenue for the Baluchistan government at the time. And he saw actually no benefit coming to Baluchistan as a nation. It was just being stolen and plundered and exploited by the Punjabis. He took a stand after 40 years, whereas many other groups, many other people like my father, he said, because we have oil in our ancestral area, in our part of Baluchistan, our tribal area. And my father from day one has said, we will not allow them to take a liter of oil from here. Because if they do, they will just buy more F-16s and further advanced weaponry. We will be enslaved for another 2,000 years. This is the enemy. It is not one nation. If something comes out in Wales and the British government sells it, the Welsh people benefit as well. Wales as a nation will benefit as well. Or whether that's not the case. It's an occupier and occupied territory. And whatever you can loot and plunder, you get your hands on, you steal. And that's exactly how the Punjabi and Musharraf regime at present are. They're just thieves in uniform.
So despite this offer of sharing the resources...
Sharing the resources, yes.
The response to the Pakistanis was to murder your nationalist leader.
Yes, it was very tempting to steal it all. Why share something when you can steal it? And that's the attitude and that's the mindset of the Punjabi army. And he was, sorry, I just would like to say a bit more about him. He was killed last year, last year, August 26th. And he was called that he was the leader of Baluchistan Liberation Army.
It was said that he was?
Yes, Pakistani government said, the army, Musharraf used to say. And he used to say he's the Baluchistan Liberation Army. And everything is going to be all good now because he's dead.
Was he the leader of the BLA?
No one knows. One thing the Pakistan government and Musharraf fails to understand, that it is not one person fighting for their personal interests or their own vested interests, because he sees things with his frame of mind. He is an immigrant who came to Pakistan for a better life. And that's exactly what he got. I mean, he got quite a good deal over here, but he got a whole country, not just a good life. And he does not understand the sentiments of the Baluch people. We have a history, we have a tradition, we have dignity, pride, and we have a bloodline. We are not at the same level as somebody like Musharraf. If he could, I don't know, to cheat or to do something so wrong to his own home country, India, what could he expect his intentions would be for his new home of Pakistan? So he compares ourselves to himself, but whereas we consider ourselves very different.
I mean, what kind of support is Baluchistan getting from other oppressed nationalities, from other international, community organizations?
At present, Baluchistan is not getting any credible help from anywhere. Unfortunately, it's not only the fault of the international community, it is the Pakistan regime which is trying to isolate Baluchistan, and in some sort of, they've created sanctions on Baluchistan. So it is a closed door game that goes on in Baluchistan. I'll just give you a small example. The leaders that are over there, for example, Akhtar Mengal, he's the leader of the Baluchistan National Party, mainstream political party with tens of thousands of following. He's been thrown into prison on trumped up charges. And a few people who are outside the country, like myself, who speak for the rights of the Baluch people, Interpol has been used as a tool of political victimization. They had asked the British government for my extradition in a swap deal with the alleged airline bomber, Rauf Rashid. This is just in the March 28th Guardian newspaper, this article came. And they had asked, so they're very desperate. Anybody who speaks and exposes their true face to the international world. The Pakistan government is very wary of that. So the leaders who are in the country are behind bars, or they have disappeared, or they get killed. People who are abroad who speak about the Baluchistan and the problem and the rights of the Baluch people and the aspirations of the Baluch people, they try to be sidelined and get victimized through organizations like Interpol. I mean, what the international community should do, join hands in some framework to stop Pakistan governments and such a rogue government's aspirations to silence their political opponents, to silence human rights activists. That's the only role, I think, if they do play, that'd be a big achievement for the Baluch struggle and the Baluch human rights situation.
It seems to me that, in a way, Pakistan is using the war on terror and the fact that the West needs Pakistani intelligence and support to fight al-Qaeda. It's using that as a leverage to try and stop the West or the wider international community from doing anything to support the Baluch people, and of course, as you say, proactively victimizing individual Baluch human rights and nationalist activists. Would that be a correct thing?
Yes, Pakistan has been using the element of fear that the West has from fundamentalism, extremism. It's been using that chip for a long time against the West, and since 9/11, it has really profited from that. Because that's why I always say the main beneficiary of 9/11 is Pakistan as a nation, and Musharraf as an individual. He was a lame duck who had no credibility, who had no status in international world, and suddenly he became a credible figure and an ally and a great friend with a war against terror. One sees Talibans were promoted by the Pakistan government, ISI. The same Taliban the British government are combating in Helmand province in other parts of Afghanistan today. Who were they funded by? By Pakistan military and ISI in particular. Al-Qaeda, where's the safe havens of Al-Qaeda? Pakistan. Where are the big Taliban leaders today? In Pakistan. Why the West chooses to ignore this fact? Are they waiting for another 9/11 to happen for them to react? What exactly, what kind of an impetus do they need before they can act? You can see any terrorist activity anywhere in the world. Pakistan is directly or indirectly involved in that. And the interesting and the sad fact at the same time is that it actually profits from that. It creates a situation and yet profits from it. It's a great talent. One has to commend their talent of fooling the West blatantly.
I suppose that if we were serious about, stopping terrorism and beating back al-Qaeda, it would be a sensible policy of the international community to support a democratic human rights government in Baluchistan, because that would be a bulwark against al-Qaeda against Islamic fundamentalists, and against this sort of Pakistani government collusion, secret collusion, with terrorist networks?
So in 2001, it was March 2001, I've got all my documented speeches in the United Nations. I said we are victims of Talibanization. Pakistan is promoting Talibanization in Baluchistan in order to counter the forces of nationalism, of Baluch nationalism. So we are the primary victims of that. So we totally agree. Baluchistan is a secular, generally very secular nation. We are not inclined towards extremism and Islamic fundamentalism. This is a phenomena pioneered and mostly born in frontier and Punjab province. Whereas when you see on the media, most coverage, Baluchistan and is related to Al-Qaeda and Taliban and Baluchistan. This is all Pakistani media manipulation. British have in their archives in the British Library, you can go, they have the reports of generally the studies of Baluch people as culture, nation, tribal. We are very secular people, not inclined towards extremism at all. The new generation, because of deprivation, Pakistan, what it's trying to create is create a deprived class in Baluchistan, a poor, deprived youth, and then incorporate them with its religious madrasas. So that's where they get the food and water.
But you see this as a deliberate ploy to undermine
Baluch nationalism.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So to strengthen the divide and rule tactic,
yes,
to strengthen the stranglehold that Pakistan has, and to prevent moves towards independence.
Correct. Plus to profit on it from the West.
Yeah.
Yeah. To capitalize on it.
Yeah. It does seem extraordinarily short-sighted that Western governments, or indeed the wider international community, can't see that supporting the Baluch struggle would be a bulwark against terrorism and Islamic fundamentalism. It seems crazy.
It doesn't make logical sense.
I mean, have you had any meetings with the Foreign and Commonwealth Office?
Other colleagues have had meetings, but...
What's been the response?
No great response. I think I have had very good response from the European Parliament. Actually, there's every time we have had 2 seminars supported by the Foreign Policy Centre in the British Parliament, whereby we had over 3 and 4 MEPs speaking on the Baluchistan issue, which was a great boost to our cause, a great boost to our people, and it gave the whole issue a different dimension.
Okay, well, look, I hope that in future we'll hear some good news from Baluchistan and the struggle for freedom and independence, and that Pakistan's role there will be exposed, and that the international community will rally behind democrats and human rights activists who are defending the Baluch people. Thank you, Mehran.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. Please join me next week for another edition of Talking with Tatchell.